welcome, Jennifer, to
Thank you.
The MHSA HHREC podcast. And if you can just tell me what Peers is about, that'll be the first question we kind of tackle.
Absolutely. So Peers, which stands for Peers Envisioning and Engaging in Recovery Services, is a local nonprofit here in Oakland that is peer-run, meaning it's run and organized by individuals with lived experience in mental health. So they have actually gone through their own mental health challenges, and we provide non-clinical peer-run support groups for the community.
All right. And what is Peers' mission, if you don't mind me asking?
Sure. So the exact wording escapes me at the moment because we're actually in the process of updating it with our strategic plan. But our mission is to support individuals with lived mental health experience in accessing the services and support that they need and recognizing the resources that are out there. So we really work to support folks in learning about the resources that are available, learning about their own mental health and wellness, and accessing services.
And when did Peers start? You know, from the ground vision, like where did it begin?
So Peers was founded back in 2001. So we've been an agency for a little over 20 years. And it was founded by a student at Cal State East Bay, back then Cal State Hayward. Mm-hmm. And she was frustrated. Her name was Tracy Thode, and she was frustrated with the lack of resources available to in particular, students with mental health concerns, and the lack of peer-run resources for the community.
You know, that makes sense. And shout out her for, starting the groundwork. You know, did it take a long time for Peers to take off?
We actually, so we were founded in 2001, and we have been working with Alameda County since 2002, 2003. So it took a little bit of time to get the programs off the ground, but we have been a provider for 20 plus years.
Awesome. And then, how many people work at Peers, and kind of, how many people do you serve?
Yeah, we have just under 20 people on staff. We have, and then we also work with independent contractors who support us in facilitating some of our support groups. And we serve, it has dipped a bit because of COVID, but we serve typically over 600 people. We connect with over 600 people a year.
Nice. That is awesome. Now, I know I didn't introduce you formally, so if you'd like to introduce yourself, I think that would help the viewers out there kind of understand who you are.
Absolutely. So I'm Jennifer Vanneman. I have been Peers' executive director since August of 2022, so I'm still pretty new with the agency. My personal journey is actually a pretty interesting one. I have been experiencing mental health symptoms for as long as I can remember, literally since I was in preschool. And that experience led me to not only be a consumer of mental health services, so I was accessing care, but also led me to want to become a social worker. So I started as a teenager in mental health care and recovery, working on my own needs and making sure that I was getting the care that I needed. And then got my master's in social work. I moved out to Michigan for that and went to the University of Michigan and worked in Detroit for a few years and then came back to California. That whole time, I was actually working with people living with HIV. So I was working in chronic health conditions, primarily first as a therapist and then as a medical social worker. So providing care coordination and really supporting people in getting back into medical care for their HIV. And I did that. I worked in reproductive health and HIV for over 20 years. And then in that experience, I was originally trained as a therapist. But in that experience of working with people with HIV, I got a lot more experience in community mental health and realized that one of the big things that was missing for so many of the people that I was working with was connection to other people like them and other people who understood the experience and knew what it was like to be living with HIV, to be living with stigma, to be living with all of these different things that come along with the diagnosis. And so when one of my positions ended, and so I was basically being laid off because funding was shifting, I decided to dive back into mental health and ended up at an agency that provides primarily mental health and substance use services, worked with them for a while and realized that I really wanted to get back into peer mental health and support folks who had lived experience and needed that care. It just so happened to work out that my agency was restructuring and I was getting laid off again, and Peers was looking for their next executive director. And it was just kind of a serendipitous meeting. And I've been with the agency ever since last year. It's been a great experience thus far. The agency does some really important work in the community, and it's been my great honor to work with them and be able to support the community and their needs.
That's amazing to hear, an amazing journey, an amazing story. Now, you mentioned the number 600 clients or participants, however we call them. But why do you think so many people are receptive to peer services? Like, what makes that generalized, or what makes that personal or interpersonal connection to the participant?
I think it really comes down to, I can't think of a better way to put it than like human nature. We naturally are drawn to people who are more similar to us and have experiences that mimic our own and that we can really relate to. And I think being a peer-run organization speaks to so many people and provides a safer space for folks to openly talk about what they're experiencing and what they're going through without fear of judgment and stigma. And I think because of that and because of the way we position ourselves in the community, we're able to provide services that people can really connect to and feel makes a difference in their lives.
Now, we mentioned like peer mental health services. What would be different, or what kind of is the barrier for individuals as far as like the clinical side? So it would be clinical versus peer run or peer mental health. Like what would be the difference, or what is the difference?
Yeah, there are a few significant differences between the clinical model of mental health and the peer-run model. First and foremost, peer-run models are primarily run by people with lived experience who are open about that experience. So being a social worker, I've worked with many mental health providers, other social workers, medical doctors who have personally shared with me their own mental health experiences, but won't necessarily share that with their clients or their patients. Mm-hmm. In peer mental health, a big and just critical part of what we do is sharing our own experiences and being able to say, I may not know exactly what you're going through, but I have been through a similar thing before, and feel that I'm in a place in my recovery where I can provide you the support that you need to move further along the journey of recovery. The clinical model also tends to be very focused on diagnosis, whereas in pure mental health, we're less concerned with diagnosis and more concerned with overall wellness and making sure that you are finding the tools and the techniques that you need to take care of yourself.
And I think all your programs I'll be talking about here shortly will speak to that. But what does the clinical model not have, or what does peers do that the clinical model does not do?
The clinical model really, in my experience, has not offered the ability to closely connect to others like you. Mm-hmm. So, in the clinical model, you're meeting with a therapist who has been trained to deal with certain diagnoses, and there are different models of therapy that they use to approach and deal with those mental health experiences. You meet with a psychiatrist who provides you with medication, whereas with pure mental health, we're not doing that medical model. We're not doing those things. We're actually providing you with still evidence-based services. So they have been studied and are found to actually be supportive and helpful for people, but they're provided by people who actually have been there and been through it. And so we end up providing a different way of looking at mental health and wellness, I would say, that really comes from a more holistic approach as opposed to solely a medical clinical model.
For sure. And, I see, at least for the peer run model, we talk about how we focus on the individual. We don't focus on, what went wrong or what's their past. We focus on present and future and how can we assist them to not only become, better human beings, but to also, move forward with their life and move forward in a very positive mental health attitude or way. So I appreciate that you sharing, you shared that. So with that being said, what are some success stories that you've received or that you know of people that have gone through the peers programming?
Absolutely. So we hear stories all the time from folks who share with us that our programs have allowed them to feel connected to the community, that they understand their mental health better and have more tools in what we call the wellness toolbox to take care of themselves and to do better and live a healthier, happier life. We really also hear stories of other people being introduced to peers from our participants, and we really rely a lot on word of mouth. That's how so much of our programming gets the participants. We also actually have a staff person who started on their recovery journey as a teenager going through our WRAP, our Wellness Recovery Action Plan programming, and has actually journeyed through to becoming a facilitator for WRAP, to becoming an advanced level facilitator, and is now one of our program managers and oversees the WRAP program as well as our teens and young adults program, and is actually not only leading that recovery journey and exemplifying the work that we do, but has also been there from early on in the agency's history.
So that individual can contest to, hey, like this actually works if you put your mind, effort, blood, sweat, and tears into it, and you can potentially, make it onto the other side of a positive mental health journey or a positive mental health succession plan.
Exactly.
That's, I really can't say it enough. I really admire organizations who focus on the peer mental health model and specifically hiring or at least bringing into the conversation of, hey, I was a client or I was a participant with you. Now I want to be a part of the agency and I want to help individuals just like myself or of like-minded individuals like myself. So that's, that's amazing. Now let's get into all of your amazing programs. What are the different peers programs? Let's just start there. Like, what are the different ones that you guys offer?
Absolutely. We have quite a few different programs. So our largest and most well-known program is our WRAP program, and WRAP stands for Wellness Recovery Action Plan. It is an evidence-based practice, meaning that it's been vigorously studied and found to be a best practice model for providing peer mental health services. And so that is, we run the WRAP groups both in person and virtually via Zoom. And it is a program that walks participants through developing a wellness recovery action plan, or a WRAP. Mm-hmm. And it helps with planning for when things are breaking down and not going well, when you're not doing as well, all the way to a crisis and how to handle that, and a post-crisis plan for after the crisis has ended and you're getting back into the normal swing of things. So they are anywhere from 6 to 12 week cycles. So it has kind of a set curriculum, and you work with your co-facilitators on understanding the different parts of WRAP and mental health, and what will work for your wellness and your wellness toolbox. So that's a big program that we have. We work with a variety of different agencies to bring those in-person groups. So we've worked with the South County Homeless Project. We've worked with East Bay Community Recovery Project, with La Familia. We have a few different sites that we work with to do the in-person groups. And then we also have our Zoom groups, both in English and Spanish as well. So we're connecting with the community in a couple of different ways to try and make sure that people who need the services and need the support can actually access it. Another program that we have that is pretty closely related to WRAP is our Teens and Young Adults program, or our TYA as we call it. So that program, we have a youth collective that teaches wellness and leadership skills to youth ages 16 to 25. And we also do youth WRAP groups. And we work with our youth collective to do different events and workshops to teach them about wellness and leadership, so they can bring that back to their community, their youth, their fellow youth, and spread the word and really spread wellness as much as possible. That program runs in cycles as well. So we have usually 2 cycles a year, and we recruit at different colleges and high schools, and partner with different community youth serving agencies to recruit for the youth collective. We also have our Speakers Bureau, which is LEVS, and it stands for Lift Every Voice and Speak, similar, based off of the song Lift Every Voice and Sing. So we wanted to embody that messaging. And what LEVS does is teaches individuals with lived mental health experience public speaking skills, and brings them into the community to actually share their recovery journey and destigmatize mental health. So we have anywhere from 20 to 25 speakers each year that go out into the community and do these speaking engagements to shine a light on mental health and destigmatize getting care and services. We also have a couple of specialized programs. One is Special Messages, and that is a support group specifically for people who hear voices or receive messages visually and auditory that others don't. And so that is a partnership with the POCC, and we work with them on co-facilitating that group for people who have those experiences as well. We also have our Buried in Treasure program, which is specifically for people it's experiencing cluttering, or as we like to call it sometimes, excessive collecting. And that is another program support group for people who are experiencing those things. We also have our large project called the Everyone Counts campaign. And that is a program that we partner with Alameda County Behavioral Health on. We focus on a specific community every 2 to 3 years. And right now we are focusing on the Asian American Pacific Islander community. So we have we call it our Hope campaign. And it's specifically for the AAPI community, where we get messaging out. We do events and workshops and wellness groups or support groups for people that are a part of the AAPI community to learn about mental health, to learn about the stigma that has existed for many years in the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities around mental health, and learning how we can honor our culture while also still honoring ourselves and taking care of our mental health. We, in the past, have focused on the Black or African American community, and we have some legacy projects from that where we have Black Wellness and Resilience, which is support groups that are focused on the Black community and really around the culture and wellness. And then we also, tied to ECC, Everyone Counts campaign, and our Black Wellness and Resilience, we have our Hope and Faith program, which is a program that we have primarily worked within Oakland, but we work largely with Black churches to do wellness workshops and arts programming for those churches, for the congregations to actually stay connected to the community and learn more about mental health. And the ultimate goal of all the work we do with the Everyone Counts campaigns is to destigmatize mental health and hopefully open people up to those discussions so that they can support one another on a day-to-day basis and also feel empowered to ask for help when they need it. We also just were awarded a new grant for a program for older adults, which will be called Pearls. And that is primarily around depression symptoms and supporting older adults ages 50 and up in understanding more about what's going on for them emotionally and working through those symptoms and those emotions to come out on the other side with more wellness tools and to be able to work through some of those challenges that they're experiencing. So that program is brand new. We are just working on the hiring for that, but it will focus on older adults and we're going to be working closely with the Area Agency on Aging for that program as well to recruit participants and support them one-on-one. The program involves connecting what are called coaches to the participants and matching them up so that they can work closely together in one-on-one coaching sessions to work through some of the challenges they're experiencing. So that's a bit of a rundown of all the different programs we have. We're working, like I said, on the Pearls program. We're getting ready to start with the new fiscal year starting up in July. We're getting ready to start new cycles of all of our programming. So now is a perfect time to learn about the programs we offer and get engaged.
Yep, and start reaching out and start, that word to mouth that you talked about. Now, I don't think we mentioned, but what areas do you service as far as, clients or participants and, who's eligible or what is the eligibility process?
So we have been very lucky in that we don't have to go through a lot of eligibility process for people. So we have a really low barrier to access. We provide all of our in-person services within the county of Alameda, from all the way from the northern tip of Alameda County to the eastern end, all the way to the south end. So we serve the entirety of Alameda County. But for our virtual groups, we allow anybody to join. So we actually, for our special messages group, we do have a participant who was a participant previously when they lived in Alameda County, and they now live out of the country and are still accessing the group to get the support ongoing that they need. So we are open to pretty much anyone who is willing and able to join us and engage in those support groups.
Awesome. And then you mentioned the age ranges as far as a couple of the programs. So a couple of them are age ranged. Some of them have age range specifications, correct?
Right. So our teens and young adults is specifically for teens and young adults. So we focus on 16 to 25. And then our older adults program will be 50 to 55 and older. But otherwise, we serve anyone pretty much from 18 to the end of life. We don't have youth programs other than our teens and young adults. But otherwise we serve the entire lifespan.
Nice. That's awesome. Now, I do want to go back to, special messages, that program you talked about. Do a lot of your patients in that program seek clinical help after they kind of realize what's going on, or they kind of realize, these resources are here for me and I do have support, but here's that little push now, or here's that little jump to obtain clinical support?
That's a great question, and it is a bit of a mixed bag. So I know that we've had participants who were already in clinical care and wanted something more. And then we've had participants who identified themselves that they have these experiences and then learned about other resources in the group and accessed care that way. So it could go either way. The beauty of special messages is that it is specifically for people who hear and see things that others may not. And it is peer run again. So you're learning from people who have also had those experiences, so they understand where you're coming from.
Okay. No, that definitely makes sense. And then also, I assume it would make peer like a good outlet for patients as far as in programming.
Definitely. So we are a great our special messages support group is a great opportunity for folks to share the experiences they're having, learn tips on how to deal with those experiences if they're distressing, and just process what's happening for them.
Okay. Now, does your approach differ by program as far as, sort of just what differentiates the programs as far as, outreach or, how to recruit or just the programming overall? What's the difference?
Yeah, great question. So our programs are different, obviously, by what we would call curriculum traditionally, in that like RAP is focused specifically on the Wellness Recovery Action Plan curriculum. LEVS also has its own workshop curriculum that they work with to provide guidance and support to the speakers so that they can beef up their public speaking skills. The teens and young adults also has a bit of a different approach because working with youth is definitely different than working with adults.
Yes, it is.
And then special messages, buried in treasures, our healing arts, which is our arts program in the church community, and our hope and faith and our AAPI all have a little bit of a different approach based on the community. We outreach in very similar ways, regardless of program. Now that we're at the end of a global pandemic, we're able to go out into public more. So we're attending more events where, outreaching to people in person. We have a media and outreach 2-person team that goes out and actually is like knocking on doors of different agencies and schools and universities just to get the information out there. For our youth program, we do use a lot of social media, and we know that that's one of the best ways to reach youth in a lot of communities is through social media. So we definitely have a pretty high presence on social media as well. So it kind of depends on the community. We, of course, for our Latinx community are offering services in Spanish. We're working to hopefully provide in the future services in other languages that are needed in the community in Alameda County as well. So we definitely tailor our approach based on which community we're working with.
Yeah. And then about this additional program, Pearls, that is just getting off the ground, will the approach be similar to your older adults programming, or as far as, the older adults that you already do service? Will that be similar, or will this also be like on social media, or how would that work?
So we will definitely be recruiting on social media with the Area Agency on Aging. We'll work with HHREC. We've got some partners in the works already to figure out referring older adults who are experiencing those challenges. But Pearls is also another evidence-based program. So it was studied by the University of Washington and developed as a program specifically for older adults who medically, they call it screening positive for depression symptoms. So there's going to be like a short questionnaire that helps us identify if the potential participant is experiencing those things and if they might benefit from the program. So it is a little different in that there's more of a set agenda and program for Pearls, but we will still be recruiting in the same ways and outreaching to the different agencies and just going to community events and letting people know that the program is there.
Yeah, no, I mean, if the wheel's already working, no need to take it off and try and redo it. So
exactly.
I completely agree. Now, throughout your work, as far as, the 20 years of experience you had beforehand, and then working in the clinical side, and now on the peer-run mental health side, what is the most common mental health challenge or mental health barrier that you have seen across the board? I know that's a very broad and general question, but as far as your experience or what your program managers or coordinators may see, what is that one that just does not kind of change?
In all the years that I've been a social worker and working in public health and mental health, the biggest thing that I have seen that is a barrier is lack of knowledge and stigma. Stigma, I tell people that stigma kills. I mean, it kills in HIV because people won't get tested. They won't go get treated. It kills in mental health because people aren't getting the care they need and they're committing suicide. They're overdosing. There's so many things happening. And I think the biggest barrier that so many people have is stigma, which to me also indicates a lack of knowledge. And so I would say lack of knowledge and stigma are the two biggest things that create barriers for people.
Now, about that mental health crisis you just mentioned, why do you think there is a mental health crisis in the United States, even with all the funding and support and programs and everything that we do receive from the government? Why isn't it working, or why isn't it working effectively as it should be?
That is definitely a difficult question to answer. I think there's a lot of different pieces to it. Again, I think one of the biggest pieces is stigma and lack of knowledge. We have spent so many years as a country, as a society, kind of shuffling away and shutting down talk of mental health. And, up until the 80s, and there are still states that have massive state-run mental hospitals. And, we would just kind of shuffle off people with mental health issues into these facilities and forget about them. And now, with the increase and in awareness and knowledge about mental health, we're seeing an uptick in diagnoses. So I think that's part of it, that there's more knowledge now. And so we're seeing more people accessing care. But because we're seeing more people accessing care, there's a smaller amount of providers to actually provide services, both from a peer-run perspective and a clinical perspective. So it's a lot of moving parts. There's the stigma and lack of knowledge. There's the increase in awareness, which is leading to an increase in diagnoses. And then there's the workforce issues where we just don't have enough providers.
I completely agree with you. And, how would you, and this is again generalized, but in if you could change one thing about the mental health crisis, what issue would you tackle first, or which one would be the main priority for you?
If it were completely up to me and I could just wave a wand and make it happen, I would say the biggest thing would be universal or single payer healthcare that has parity with mental health and physical health care. So in California, we've gotten lucky. There are laws that say that mental health care has to be covered the same way that physical health care is. That hasn't solved the problem of there needing to be more providers. And there's still a lack of access for people because there is that segment of people who can't get coverage through Medi-Cal. make too much money for assistance with Covered California, but can't because of housing costs, food costs, transportation costs, all of those things, can't afford the insurance on their own. And maybe they're a gig worker, and so they don't get benefits from work. There's so many different things that make it so that people can't get the coverage that they need, despite California having a law that says you have to have medical coverage. The state of California is pretty far ahead from a lot of other states in its understanding of mental health care and the need for access to care and medical insurance. But we're still not where we need to be.
Yeah, no, I hear that. And, you know, when you talk about, because this just came to my mind, when you talk about the increase in diagnoses, this new generation of children and of young adults, we are not just sitting idly by, you know, don't talk, don't tell. That's not us. We will tell you everything if we believe it, and we will find resources and support, whether, you know, someone tells us yes or no. And I think that has to do a lot with, you know, the diagnosis increase, but then also, like you said, there's a lack of support services regarding, you know, the increase. There's just not enough help around. And I will agree with you, California is ahead of the mental health crises, but like you said, we're not there yet. I do believe we'll get there. I'm not so sure about other states. You know, hopefully they kind of mimic the model of our Mental Health Services Act that we enacted, I think, in 2008 or 2007. And I hope that more states follow and, you know, follow in the footsteps of, hey, you have all these people, they're going through mental health crisis, they're here, they need support, you know, support them. Because this is essentially who you have to take care of.
I agree completely. And I think it's important for us to have conversations like this so that we can let people know what's out there and what support there is and learn more about their own mental health and wellness, because everybody has mental health. We all have a brain. We all have an emotional state. We all have a mental state. It is universal that we experience things related to our emotions and our mental health. For everybody, that may not mean that they have a medical diagnosis. Like, it may not get to the point where it's a chronic condition for them, but we all have experiences with our emotions and mental health. And we all, at different points in our lives, need some sort of support, even if it means we call a friend because we had a bad day. You know, we need that support in some way. And for those of us like myself who need the medical support as well, the access just isn't there. And I recognize, like, for myself, that I have been very lucky in that I've had access to care when I needed it. But even then, it's been a struggle. And I have had pretty good medical insurance my whole life that has allowed me to access mental health care. And I still struggled with accessing the care that I needed because there was a lack of providers, because there was, you know, shortages in providers in especially, we know in California, Kaiser in particular, which is, I think, is the largest insurance provider in the state of California. They have a major issue. They're being sued by the state because their access to mental health care is not where it is supposed to be legally by law. And they're not the only ones that are struggling with that. You know, I know that, like, Sutter has struggled with it. United Health, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, they're all struggling with that. And that is just from an insurance provider's perspective. When you consider the people who don't have access to insurance, it's even worse. And so that access to care really needs to be beefed up so that people can actually get the services and the care they need, either from the clinical model, which works for some people, or the peer-run model, or a combination of both, whatever's going to work best for someone on their recovery journey.
Yeah, no. And with the future of peers, I can see you're moving in that direction of, it's not just clinical, it's not just peer run, it's a combination of both sometimes. And are there any other future plans besides Pearls that you kind of foresee coming, or that you want to have come to fruition?
Yeah, great question. So we are at an exciting time for the agency. We are just finalizing a new strategic plan for the next 5 years. So one of the big things that we're going to be focused on is launching individual level services. So we do group services, and we have been doing them well for over 20 years. When the pandemic started and lockdown happened and people were scared and not able to go to in-person support groups, we did two things. We shifted to virtual support groups. So we moved to Zoom support groups. And then we also started doing individual calls to our participants just to check in and provide a little bit of support. We learned from that experience that those one-on-one check-ins made a huge difference for people. They identified that they were able to get through lockdown and the pandemic more easily because they knew they had someone they could turn to for support. They had the virtual support groups. We really learned that we have the capacity for individual level services and that people need those services. So Pearls is going to be our first full foray into individual level services because there'll be one-on-one sessions with coaches. But we're also looking at the possibility of the peer support specialist services. So with the change in the state of California to certify peer support specialists so that we can actually bill Medi-Cal for those individual peer support services. Our agency now has how many? I think it's 8 individuals already, and we're working on the rest of our program staff who are certified peer support specialists. So we're working on getting certified for Medi-Cal as well to provide those one-on-one services and that peer support, that billable peer support, so that even more people can access the care they need.
Because you'd be an in-house one-stop shop for Cal support and also individual peer support.
Exactly.
That sounds amazing, and I can't wait to see it come to fruition. And my final question would be: do you have any links and/or resources that individuals can find in our description below that we'll add? Are there anything that you'd like to add?
I would say the biggest one would be our website, peersnet.org.
Okay.
We have a calendar with our groups on it. We have a little bit of information about all of the different programs we have. And then you can see like who our staff people are, who our board is made up of. We have a really diverse staff. We have a really diverse board too that really is dedicated to the work we're doing. So I would say, jump onto our website, join the mailing list, find us on social media. We've got a lot of different resources. We share information close to daily for people. So we share a lot of information through our mailing list, our website, and our social media.
Awesome. And then if just for our elders who are listening, I know at least my elders who I work with, they like to call. So is there like a call number also on the website where they can call like a general office?
Absolutely. So we have all of our contact information on our website. Our direct line for our front desk is 510-832-7337. Folks can call. They're likely to get connected to our receptionist, who is Portia, and she is a wonderful human being and is, really engaging and warm. So she's a great first person to connect with at the agency. Folks can also find email contact and our address too, if they're so inclined to write to us.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for coming onto the podcast and sharing a little about yourself and then about all the amazing work that Peers is doing. And if anyone has any comments or questions in, the chat or whatnot, we'll refer them to your website or anyone who is on your staffing list.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.